Hello, hope all is well. So I thought, as I've seen this being asked a few times on some of my other videos, I'd do a quick video about how to get the tightest sounding metal gate within your Fractal unit. So we'll make this one from scratch. I've got a blank preset here, so we'll go into quick build. We'll have an in and an out at the end. We'll connect them together. We'll put an amp and a cab smack bang in the middle. And that's it for now. So we'll start off with the basics and then we'll take it from there. So for this example, I'm going to be using a typical amp and a cab that might be used for metal. And that would be the 5153 Stealth Red that got added recently. And then for the cab, we're going to be using the Dyna cab. Let's go for the Recto Slant. And then we'll go for a dynamic mic. And I'll just go for a position that works. And the only thing I'll do here is that I'll add a low cut and a high cut around 80 on the low cut at 12 dB octave and a high cut of around 8K. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to purposely boost the amp and get tons of gain just to show you how the gate actually works and responds so that you have a better idea of what you're doing and why you're making these decisions. So I'll be adding a drive block in front of the amp and the cab. We'll go for 808 overdrive, max level. We'll leave drive around 1. So typically, most users are familiar with the gate in the input block of the Fractal unit. So in the advanced mode, intelligent gate type, we have the following controls. And for me, the best way of thinking about this or explaining this is to use a door comparison. So basically, the threshold is going to be at which point or at how high your guitar will be played, will that door open. The ratio will be how soundproofed that door is. So the higher the ratio, the more sort of noise reduction or noise cutoff there will be. The attack time will be how quickly the door opens. And then the release time, in this case, will be how long that door will stay open before then it closes again. So hopefully that sort of analogy makes a bit more sense in looking at these controls and making the most of it and trying to figure out which settings are best for you. So for metal, we kind of want it to be as quick as possible and responsive as possible. And so this would mean having the highest ratio, the lowest attack time possible, and the lowest release time possible as well. And then you set the threshold depending on how much noise there is or how much you have to hit the guitar so that the signal goes through the signal chain. That definitely works, but the amount of gain I'm using is to expand on an issue that we're having here. So basically the gate is cutting off at the right time, and that's not an issue. However, with the amount of gain and push coming after that, we're still getting that noise after the gate is closed, which you can hear at the end there. And the solution for this is basically using a really tight sidechain style gate, which thankfully is also within the Fractal unit. So the way to do that is to set up a gate block after the amp and the cab over here. And then we'll set it to modern gate. And then we get those same controls again. So I'll just turn off the gate that's already on at the moment at the front. We'll turn that to off. And then we'll just look at the gate block here. So like the door analogy before, we don't have the ratio amount, but we do have the attenuation in terms of level. So in this case, we want the door to be cutting off as much noise as possible. So we set this as low as it can go, so minus 80 decibels. And then we want the attack time to be as quick as possible, so 1 millisecond. Release time as well to 1 millisecond. And we have this extra control here within the modern gate, and that's the hold time. So the hold time also relates to how long the door will stay open once it's initially been opened, if that makes sense. So the best way of showing this is in an example. So the addition of the hold time along with the release time is that you now have this extra control which will basically say how long, regardless of how loud your guitar is, will that door or that gate stay open until it then reacts to the release time on how quickly you will close it, if that makes sense. I know it's a bit more to take in at this case, but if you're just going for the quickest, tightest responding gate, I would suggest setting the hold time to 1 millisecond and the release time to 1 millisecond as well. Now, as you can hear, given the huge amount of noise that we're generating with the drive block and the amp block, I've had to set the threshold really high to compensate for that, as it's listening to whatever's coming before the gate. And this is where the trick comes in to get a really tight responding gate that's set up in a sidechain style. And that's down here within the sidechain section of the noise gate. And we set this simply to be input 1 or whatever input you're going to within your fractal unit, which is typically input 1. And we have this additional control here, which is next to the sidechain input source, which is the low cut and the high cut. And that is basically saying at what range do you want the gate to be listening to decide when it opens and closes the door, or in this case, opens and closes the gate. And so to get things really, really tight, we can set this range to be really low. So for example, I can set it to be around, from 80 or 90 to 1.3, 1.4K. And that'll be a really tight and responsive. However, you can go ballistic with this and set it even lower. So you can set the high cut as low as it will go and set the low cut to be just underneath where the high cut is. And so it's only listening to a small spectrum of the frequency or the signal coming out of your guitar and then deciding, okay, at that point, we're going to open or close the gate. So in this example, I've got the sidechain set really low. And what this means is that the threshold of the actual gate, we can set this a lot lower. And now it's around minus 94, 95, and that's with these settings. So that means that you can set your threshold lower, which in turn means it will be more responsive, as you can hear, it'll be more responsive to the amount of signal coming out of your guitar. And with this, it's a super aggressive, tight sounding gate that's before all the noise that you're throwing into the front of the amp. Now to further demonstrate, I'm going to add a few more kind of like noise generations and blocks in front of the amp and the cab, just to give you some idea of how tight this gate actually is. So we'll add another drive block, which is the face fuzz over here, 100% mix. Let's max the level as well. And then we'll see how this sounds with the gate that's on. So there you go. Obviously, this is quite an extreme example, but it's just to show you the sort of tools that you have at your disposal to get a really aggressive, tight-sounding gate within the Fractal unit, which means that you can go absolutely nuts with the amount of noise, fuzz, whatever you want to put in front of the amp and the cab, or in front of the gate in this case, and still have a really tight and responsive noise gate to go along with that. And one last thing here, I'll just say that typically on at least the metal presets that I make, I always turn off the input gate. You do this by turning the threshold to 0, so it turns off. And then I use a gate in this fashion, so an aggressive sidechain style gate. The only thing I do on my main preset is I've got delays, reverbs after the gate. However, for like lead scenes, I always turn off this gate. That way I get the best kind of feel and response I find to say lead work, as I much prefer that to even having like some kind of gate within that. Of course, it's totally up to you how you use this. I'd suggest experimenting with this and seeing what works best in your setup. So thanks a lot for watching. If you're interested in checking out a video on further techniques for a brutal high gain sound, I've linked one over here on getting HM2 vibe style tones such as knock loose or end, which might tickle that itch as it were. In any case, hope to see you in the next one. Take care.